everyone. I'm Rich Nation, and this is Shell Point Today for the 1st of June 2015. On today's show, we will talk about the Academy on the Go trip to the Florida Keys that's coming up in just a few days. And we'll find out about Adrian Kerr's Academy class on the Egyptian pyramids. But first, we want to remind you that you can watch the Shell Point Resident Hurricane Seminar all this week on Channel 12 at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. Proper planning for a safe evacuation during a hurricane is vital. If you were unable to attend the seminar in person last week, make sure to catch it this week on Channel 12. Today is the first class on chronic disease self-management, entitled It's All About You. It's important to note that the time and location of this 6-week class has been changed. It will be held in the Osprey Room on the island at 1:15 p.m. It will not be held at the Woodlands as previously advertised. All sessions will be at the Osprey Room on the island. Tonight at the Crystal Dining Room is a special table reserved for singles. It's called, you guessed it, the Singles Table. No reservations are necessary, but make sure to arrive between 5 and 5:30 to acquire your seat for an enjoyable social time over dinner. If you're unable to attend, no worries. The Singles Table is at the Crystal every Monday and Wednesday evening. This Thursday night is the first workshop called Singing Through the Summer. All singers are invited to exercise your voice and sharpen your reading skills by attending the summer choral workshops led by Randy Woods, Minister of Worship and Music of the Village Church. 6 summer choral workshops will be held in the choir room of the Village Church beginning this Thursday. All singers are encouraged to attend, whether you're a soloist, community choir singer, or church choir member. To register or for more information, contact Caitlin Van Scoy at 454-2057. Recently, Terry Koloth sat down with Bev Chandley to talk about their upcoming Academy on the Go trip. This one is overnight stay in the Florida Keys. The trip departs this Thursday morning, and Bev has more to tell us about this exciting adventure.
Hello, I'm here with Bev Chandley, Program Coordinator, and Bev is our person who takes you on the Academy on the Go educational field trips, and we're talking about a last chance to go to the Florida Keys for an overnight trip. Thanks for joining me, Bev.
That's right, Terry.
So why are we going to the Keys?
Well, you know, Terry, we've been to Key West before as a group, but we've not gone to some of the smaller, more interesting places.
Right.
Starting with the Wild Bird Rehabilitation Center. They bring in the wounded birds and they give them a great life. It's kind of like a shell point for shell point for the birds out in the Keys, and it gets really great reviews. And I think the residents will really like that.
A resort for birds.
Yeah,
All
resort
right.
for birds.
Super. And then what do we do after that?
Oh, we're going to go out to Marathon. We'll go over the long 7-mile land bridge, and we'll go out to Marathon where we'll stay at our hotel. We'll have a wonderful dinner there, and then we'll walk along the beach because we're right on the water, and our hotel's right on the water, so that's going to be pretty nice.
So beautiful there.
It is, it is. And, the next day we spend almost the entire day at the Theater of the Sea, which is set up as a animal awareness for the marine animals such as the rays, the dolphins, and otters. And some of the residents have even signed up to swim with the dolphins.
Wow, fabulous.
For an extra fee. But
That's so great. So really, this is kind of an action-packed yet restful trip.
Yes.
Because you're going to be in a beautiful place on the water, but you're going to really get the flavor of the Keys with the creatures of the sea and the creatures of the air that surround us.
And you'd be amazed, Terry, that a lot of the residents really have never been to the Keys.
So close yet so far.
Yes, and they all think that it's all like Key West. So this is going to be our exposure to the real Keys.
And it is so different from Key West.
Yes, yes. This is very different from Key West.
Well, we thank you very much for planning this weekend getaway in the summer to a beautiful place.
From its simple Nile village origins, ancient Egypt developed into a world civilization and empire which lasted over 2,000 years. Some of the most popular icons are the pyramids, which were constructed as the final resting place for the pharaohs. In Adrian Kerr's class on Egyptian pyramids, you'll review how these early royal tombs developed from simple mud brick, single-story mastabas, I guess that's some kind of Egyptian word, to the stone-stepped pyramids, and then to the classical shaped smooth pyramids. Well, Adrian will be talking about all of them in much greater detail, and he's sitting by with Terry Koloth, who has more.
Hello, everyone. I'm Terry Koloth, and I'm here today with Professor Adrian Kerr, and we're talking about right where we began with Professor Kerr, Egypt. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Terry. It's a pleasure to be at Shell Point again.
Well, we started with classes on Egypt. That's how we met you. And now we're going back to look at the pyramids again.
Yes, indeed. It's a journey going back 5,000 years. And it starts with the very earliest concepts of where can I be buried that's going to be safe. And the early Egyptian kings had the money, obviously, to build tombs. And they decided that they wanted to be buried deep in the stone, but they didn't want people to find the entrance. So they put layers of brick on top of the tomb, hoping that nobody would actually dig through the layers of brick, which actually failed badly, but they didn't realize that. And so that tomb structure is called a mastaba tomb. It looks a bit like a step bench, very same shape. It's got side angles and a flat top, and you entered it from the top. And in those days, the kings were celebrating the unification of Egypt. We're talking about 3000 BC, when the North Kingdom and the South Kingdom came united by a military battle, and one king ruled. But to represent the two kingdoms of his empire, he always built two tombs. So in all Egyptian tombs from that period, you'll have a north tomb and a south tomb. He's only buried in one, of course, but the other represented, it was an empty, it was just to represent the fact that he also ran both kingdoms. And that's how tomb building began. And then they went a stage further, and rather than use mud brick, which eventually gets damaged and broken down, they started to build in stone. And a king called Khazakemwi was the first builder in stone on the planet. And he actually built his mastaba tomb, the bench, so to speak, out of small stones about this size. And that became the beginning of monumental stone building in the world. And then the king said, well, I've now produced a bench. Why don't I put a bench on top of the bench? And so a king called Djoser came to his architect after he had finished his mastaba tomb, which by now had reached 200 feet long by about 60 foot wide. And he looked at it and said, well, I'm still alive, architect. Why don't we put another one on top? And the architect said, yes, master. Oh, yeah, what a great idea. So then he expanded the bottom and he put another one on top. And then the king came to inspect the works later and said to his architect, well, I'm still alive, let's go for another one. And so this went on and on and on and on until they had 6 benches all on top of each other, getting smaller and smaller. And so the first stepped pyramid, as we call it, was constructed by King Djoser about 2600 BC. And that's the very first monumental pyramid the world had seen, and dramatically different from anything that had been built before. He went from 40 foot high to 250 foot high. It's quite a step forward in just a few years.
The same architect?
The same architect. And then he died, and his successor didn't want to have his pyramid built beside his father's. He wanted to have his own site. So he built his site out of sight of the other one. And that was a disaster, because he went for a pyramid based on a step pyramid, but then decided to fill it in. So he built the step pyramid, and then he filled in the square bits with nice smooth casing stones, but when they did that, they didn't secure the casing limestone into the base stone, and so with earth tremors, it all fell down. So if you go to that pyramid today, which I'll show photographs of, it looks like more like a lighthouse than a pyramid. But it's one of my favorite pyramids because nobody's ever excavated, and there are 100-foot high piles of debris at the base of this pyramid. And boy, wouldn't it be marvelous just to have permission to excavate into that pile of debris which hasn't been touched for 4,500 years.
Well, you've been there so many times. What of all this can you see remains of?
The Old Kingdom kings built pyramids out of stone, so they're nearly all existing. And that's the marvel. For around 2,600 to about 2,400, there were 90 pyramids built, and I've been in 110 of them. it seems. But only a handful are built in stone, and those are culminating in the Giza Plateau, where King Khufu, the greatest builder, put his mark on pyramid building by building a 460-foot high pyramid on the Giza Plateau, which had a very strong limestone base. And if you go to Cairo today and are patient and drive west from Cairo, you get to the city of Giza, which is a horrible, ugly suburb, overcrowded. But the plateau, which rises about 100 feet off the Nile floor, is where the three great pyramids that we all think about when we think of Egyptian pyramids. There's the great one of Khufu, which is the biggest. His son Khafre built beside it, and then his son Menkaure built a smaller one. So they're all three lined up.
Interesting. And the labor was cheap.
The labor was controversial. Up until late Victorian times, it was accepted that the biblical record was correct. In the biblical record, we have Moses and the slaves building structures for the king. It's interesting, the Bible never mentions which king it was, so we have no clue when the captivity occurred. It just called him Pharaoh all the time. It would be nice if it said Ramesses or Akhenaten or Mentuhotep. Any of these names would have been able to pinpoint the period, but we don't have that, so it's conjecture. So ever since the Bible was written, it's been assumed that indeed slaves built the structures of Egypt. And that held, because there's no contradictory evidence, until probably 1970s, 1980s, when the pyramid area had been cordoned off for a long time. So you can't build there. It's a site which is for tourism only and research. And one of the great research projects was to try and uncover the spoil heaps southwest of the pyramids, which had been left covered for thousands of years. And gradually the doctoral students started skimming off the soil, the sand, and they went further and further until they got down to the level where there were foundation stones and room layouts, and they discovered a whole village buried in the sand. And when they looked at them, they were small rooms, but they were family rooms, and these were where the workers lived who built the pyramids. Only in the last 20 years has this been discovered. And you can find little notes. They wrote notes to each other, not on Post-its, but on the equivalent of Post-its, which were shavings of limestone, which had chipped off the stones when they were building the pyramids. And they write love letters to each other, and they'd say, oh, I worked hard today, or I put the stone in place, or I went ill today, I couldn't go to work. And through this list of these stone chippings which have been written on, we start to get a completely different picture, which has now become accepted, that these were not slaves. These were people who, one, were fed with bread every day by the government, given beer every day by the government. If they had a broken leg, they'd be having a free medical treatment. If they had so severe damage that they couldn't carry on working, they were given a pension for the rest of their lives. And so it's transformed the concept. These were not slaves, they were farmers. And in those days, you paid your taxes to the king in the form of grain. You can't actually do any farming during the period when the Nile overflows onto the land. So effectively, you can't watch television, you can't read books. So what do you do? You give up your time to the king for those 3 months. And so this is what's called a corvée system, where you as a farmer would volunteer 3 months of your labor to do what the king wanted in place of paying taxes in the form of grain. And they were kept in these villages, and they did their 3 months and then went back to their villages and carried on being a farmer. And so only in the last 20 or 30 years, we've turned things upside down, and these were effectively farmers who were persuaded to come and move stone for the pharaoh. Now, of course, the actual building of the pyramids is a very sophisticated piece of work, and they've been done by architects and stonemasons. They were permanent employees of the government. But the people who are simply moving blocks out of the quarry, just hauling stone, they were farmers like you and I.
We hope you join us. It is Ancient Egyptian Pyramids with Professor Adrian Kerr.
And now let's bring you up to date on all the latest happenings, academy news, menus, and village church connections, right after this Listening to the Words preview from David Howenstein.
This week's Listening to the Words tells the story of shell pointers Bill and Carolyn Bartlett, who sailed the Great Loop, a circumnavigation of eastern North America aboard their 36-foot catamaran. As Bill put it, once you have lived on a boat where you learn to rely only on yourself and each other for everything, it's never the same being on land again. Shell pointer Peter DeLisser recalls putting off a business appointment so he could fully experience a thunderstorm over New York's Hudson River. Shell pointer Joy Ellen Ryan talks to us about aging backwards. Shell Point resident David Jackson's late wife Ellie Jackson painted a wonderful word picture of the shabby gate that represented poverty. A beggar was enriched from returning a diamond ring. On a lighter side, Fort Myers Dr. John Agnew turns a shabby carpet into a fantasy of a bearskin rug in front of a romantic fireplace. I'm your reader-host, David Howenstein, reminding you that Listening to the Words is on Shell Point Channel 12, twice each hour, today through Sunday. If you know of any of the many Shell Point residents who do not have Shell Point's Channel 12 on their TV sets, let them know either of the pathways to this program. They can go to www.shellpoint.net and click on Media, and then click on Listening to the Words. Or they can go to www.shellpoint.net/listening. Either way, I will be sure to say thank you for listening to the words.
Hello and welcome to the Happening segment of Shell Point TV. I'm Caitlin Van Scoy and I'm here with Heather Batty, and we're going to let you know all of Monday's activities. We start bright and early at 8 a.m. with men's match play doubles tennis at the Woodlands tennis courts. And from 8 to 5 today, the mobile mammography will be here in front of the Village Church. 8:45, we have virtual bowling in the Resident Activity Center. And we have billiards being played at 9:15, also in the Resident Activity Center. The Lollygaggers Paddlers will head out for their weekly outing at 9:15. They leave from the kayak storage. And pottery with instruction is available at 9:15 in the pottery studio. 10 o'clock is the time for men's match play doubles tennis at the Woodlands tennis courts. The Susie Q heads out at 10 a.m. to Matanzas on the Bay. You do need to sign up for that. And at 10:15, we have Parkinson's Enrichment Group meeting in the community room of King's Crown. 10:30, we have Disciple Men's Bible Study Group in the game room of the Woodlands. And Table Tennis Clinic will be in the Tarpon Room at 10:45. Our last morning activity is at 11:30, a Health Connections class, Bar Basics in the Health Club, and that's currently full. Well, here's Heather to tell you all about our afternoon activities.
Well, this afternoon just looks just as busy. At 12 o'clock, we have Mahjong in the Sable Room at the Woodlands. At 1:15, you can go to Advanced Table Tennis, and that's in the Tarpon Room. At 1:15, we have another Health Connection program. It's all about you, and that's in the Osprey Room. Sign up is required for that class. At 1:15, we have Samba, which is a card game at the Resident Activity Center. At 1:45, Health Connections class, which is Balance and Mobility Training Level 1. That is closed, and that is at the Health Club, as that's currently full. At 2 o'clock, we have the Beady-Eyed Bead Club in the Oak Room at the Woodlands. At 3 o'clock, Health Connections, we have Pilates Stretch at the Health Club. There's no sign-up required. You can just show up for that class. At 4 o'clock, we do have Pickleball at the Pickleball Court. 5 o'clock, we do have our singles table at the Crystal Dining Room. 6:30, Duplicate Bridge in the Game Room at the Woodlands. At 7 o'clock, we have Square Dancing at the Health Club. This is currently closed and full. Well, that's all we have for today. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Terry Coleth with your Academy information from Monday, the first day of June. You can go to Anatomy of Words at 10:30 in the Oak Room of the Woodlands if you are interested in the English language. You will have a good time. I'd like to share with you some new classes coming tomorrow. Professor Adrian Kerr is going to teach the ancient Egyptian pyramids. And we have that wonderful iPhone walk-in clinic with Penny Mudridge of Nautilus and some very helpful volunteers. Take your questions to them.
Menus for Monday. In the Crystal Room, the Crystal Platter is fried chicken with baked beans and coleslaw. The dinner special is Old Home Cooking Night for $11.95, and the soup of the day is tomato. In the Island Cafe for lunch, the special is a chicken tender wrap with onion rings for $7.75. The dinner special is orange chicken with white rice and grilled vegetables for $8.75. And the Palm Grill is closed on Mondays. All menus are available 24 hours a day at www.shellpoint.net.
Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey, Assistant Pastor. I've had trees on my mind lately. Trees. Grateful that those who planned our community had the foresight to plant hundreds of trees. As I walk around the island every morning, I marvel at the palms, the banyans, and many other trees, some of them radiant in their season. I'll show you a few of my still pictures during the course of this video. Outside one building, the magnificent jacaranda has just shown off its purple blossom, just as the royal poincianas are developing their flaming red. Sometimes I think as I walk through the park how the branches of the banyan trees produce aerial roots that later become accessories to the trunks. They remind me how the tender young people we train grow in time to support their seniors. Think about that. Trees are on my mind just now, partly because recently a resident friend lent me a book of poems, in which one that caught my attention had for title simply Trees, written in 1913 by Joyce Kilmer, who was a man, by the way. Not that it matters. It goes like this. I think that I shall never see a poem lovely as a tree that looks at God all day and lifts her leafy arms to pray. A tree that may in summer wear a nest of robins in her hair, upon whose bosom snow has lain, who intimately lives with rain. Poems are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Only God can make a tree. That line has stayed with me. In the creation story, the Bible informs us that the Lord God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that are pleasing to the eye and good for food. The Bible goes on to mention more than 30 types of trees: almond, apple, cedar, fig, myrtle, oak, olive, pine, palm, sycamore, walnut, willow, to name a few. When it comes to trees in the Bible, one's mind soon jumps to the first Psalm, which speaks of the person whose delight is in the law of the Lord. That's the Bible. And who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Is my delight in the law of the Lord? Is yours? Another psalm informs us that the righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. In times of peace, we read that Judah and Israel dwelt safely, every man under his vine and his fig tree, from Dan even to Beersheba. And Martin Luther, the great reformer, reminds us that God writes the gospel, not in the Bible alone, but also on trees, and in the flowers and clouds and stars. A few days ago, we had a storm of major proportions. The howling wind driving sheets of rain horizontally off the estuary. I marveled at how God had made the palm trees to bend and flex in the wind so that they could take the storm in stride. The next morning I woke to a blue sky and calm winds as I set out on my early morning walk. I passed a sign reading, "Road closed," but didn't give it a second thought. Until turning a corner, I saw the road before me completely blocked by a massive black olive tree that was lying on its side, totally blocking the road, with its enormous root mass standing vertically, perhaps 12 feet tall. It was a tragic sight that touched me emotionally, frankly, because there was something pitiful about this majestic old tree being ripped from its moorings. I took photos and continued my walk. At noon, I passed that way again to see workmen with a large truck and a mechanical claw rapidly disposing of the foliage and the branches. I couldn't resist. Late afternoon, I drove the golf cart home via the downed tree. The road closed sign was gone and the road was clear. But to my amazement, the huge trunk of the fallen black olive tree was now standing vertically like a proud pillar, having been carefully replaced in the massive hole it had created. My mind went at once to the book of Job in the Bible, which affirms that there is hope for a tree. If it is cut down, it will sprout again, and its shoots will not fail. But that hope assumes a healthy root structure. Surely there was no hope that our barren tree trunk would survive and create new branches and foliage. Indeed, so within a week it had been carted away. There was no hope for the fallen black olive, but there is hope for me and for you. When we fail, when we are cut down, there is restoration thanks to the grace of God. The Good Shepherd restores my soul. He may empty my home, scatter my friends, and weaken my body, but he restores my soul. There is hope for a tree. Looking at that vertical tree trunk every day for the week it was still standing, I pictured in my mind's eye a crossbar and the Son of God giving up his life on a tree that he himself had created. Think about it. In order to make it possible for me to be reconciled with God. The Apostle Paul put it this way: Christ has redeemed us from the curse of the law. That's the Mosaic law. Being made a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who hangs on a tree. It was on a tree that Jesus, the Lamb of God, died as our substitutionary sacrifice so that we might have eternal life through faith. So, only God can make a tree. And the good news is that because of what happened on Calvary's tree, there is hope today for you and for me. And thank you for tuning in to Village Church Connections.
Thanks for joining us today. Return tomorrow to learn about a self-defense class that will be taught right here at Shell Point, and Don Boren will give us the details on the summer concert series. I'm Rich Nation, and this has been Shell Point Today for Monday, June 1st. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully with my co-anchor by my side.